I'll call this meeting to order. It is 5:01. Is there any modifications, additions to the agenda?
Vice President Chapman, you have modified minutes
Yes.
from spring planning session. Those primarily are comments by Commissioner Fox. So these would, if you approve these under consent, these would be the revised minutes.
Okay.
No other changes from staff.
Okay.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to pull item K, Sharp's account, and put it in executive session under real estate negotiation.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything else? And then, so we'll go into public comment.
There's several comments. We have Brad Pickering, who's the shipping manager. I believe he would like to make some comments. And then there are other written comments that were received that should be in front of you from other representative companies that utilize the bridge.
Negotiation. Oh, yeah. So that's why I'm going to executive session. It's
Okay, is
scheduled for
Brad here or? Oh, he's on the, so we'll let's start with Brad.
Or charges.
And you could leave it to limit it to 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, I just like to reiterate again the crucialness of the bridge to our business and the business of our fruit growers in the Hood River Valley. And we would like to ask and support any options there are to repair the bridge, to restore it back to a 40-ton capacity, to help reduce the cost to our growers to haul their fruit over the bridge, and for us to ship fruit out of the gorge worldwide to help our business. And I just want to reiterate that it's crucial to us. And I've submitted some information to Michael as long as a letter of support, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Brad. Appreciate you coming. And next we'll have Linda. Up here. Yes, please.
Time ago. Do you remember? Okay. Christian, maybe a little longer than 5 minutes. We'll see. I'll try to keep it short. I brought the wrong glasses, everybody. So I've got my $10 Walmart ones. And so I really, was rushing out. Michael, I want to first say on the last, so I'm Linda Maddox. I'm sorry, Linda Maddox. It's been so long since I've testified in front of anybody. That I've forgotten. I need to give my address, 3018 Dana Lane in Hood River. And I know many of you, but there are some that I don't know. I've just seen like maybe once before. I want to congratulate you on this, the last newsletter the port put out, because I felt like I was reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh. You were actually saying that the port really doesn't own, you say this, I'm quoting you, really doesn't own anything. It is a public agency. And you go on to develop that further, that whole theme further on the back page where you talk about how the port is a steward of public lands. And you'll see where this ends if you follow my where I'm going to be going, because I just think it's really great that this is acknowledged here in your newsletter. It's not too bad we can just put that someplace where everybody gets to see that all the time, because it is true. And everyone who uses the waterfront or the port property is also a steward. I agree with you. Okay, and speaking about that, I have been concerned, not in the package you have today, but I've seen a developing issue and I've been concerned about it, and that is the Barman property. And the Barman property, as Michael knows, has been a controversial and not an easy fit. It's been very hard to figure out what should go there and what shouldn't. And I was very upset months ago when I saw that it was mainly going, that you had asked for RFPs on it and you got them back. And I don't remember, there were 7 around, I don't remember, and I didn't check today, but a number. And I understand you're now down to a fewer number, or maybe just one, for a hotel on that property. And then doing some sort of a land lease. Okay, and I think I spoke about a year ago, maybe last summer, about a hotel period there as well. But I just don't see how that is going to add to the public experience, the experience of the public and the people that really own and have this space here, the citizens of Hood River, how a hotel is going to make any difference in their lives, whether there's a hotel there or not. So I was starting to rack my brain about what else could be there. And the only thing that I've come up with so far, I don't have as many ideas as I used to have. I used to be full of ideas. And I'm somewhat more limited now, but I still think a visitor center, some sort of thing where they drop off, Cat would use for dropping off people, something that would be more for the public or for the tourists. What's happening here in the gorge, as many of you know, if any of you go and use trails, you can't just go and use a trail or park somewhere without getting perhaps a ticket, because certain places require this and other places will require that. I mean, it's a mess. It truly is. And for someone who has been on the gorge for 35 years, it's even messier for me. And so I got thinking, well, what could be really useful would be a visitor center that would have information. Okay, this is the pass you need for here. That's what you need. And maybe sell those passes, et cetera. I don't know. That's just one idea. And, or have it be drop off for people that are coming by bus or CAT or wherever, by public transportation. But I would like you to, I'm going to challenge you to rethink that before you start moving even farther along in an MOU with one hotel developer. And I just don't think that's going to serve. How many times have I been in a hotel that is down here on the boat basin? How many times? 0. It doesn't do anything for me at all. I mean, I was very involved in all of that project, as some of you know, but I think it's fine. It's over there, but it doesn't add to what actually happens down here. Okay. Let me see what else I had. The main thing was the hotel. But I had other things I wanted to speak of. Oh, Mike, I have not formally met you. And you seem very knowledgeable about the bridge, but it's at the spring meeting just a month ago, you said something that got my attention. And that was that talking about putting 3 more buildings on the maritime piece on the waterfront. Okay, I just like, oh my God, he's actually, is he thinking that, or was he being funny? And others that are port commissioners know that I've been very much against buildings, period, because I see our community growing. With the whole west side planning huge density, I see us having up to 4,000 to 5,000 more people here, that we are going to have as much space along the waterfront for recreation. And you guys, even when you were doing this, you guys, I'm sorry to say that, but anyway, the people that are working, that are port commissioners, you recognize, that there are more and more people coming here. And so I just think we've got to be very careful about what we do to any water property that's right along the water. And Michael has heard this 100 times if he's heard it, once from me. But I just want to mention that too. And I'm also concerned about Lot 1. And then the uses that you were talking about, putting an anchor way. I realize you may put anchor way in the road there, but I'm still been also thinking about that. What ideally would that be? And I'm still wondering if that should just be some sort of like town square, maybe with some smaller buildings around. But just think of all the ways it's used when we have fires, when we have 2 feet of snow, et cetera, et cetera. It's used for parking. It's used for all sorts of safety things. It's sort of like almost like a safety net for our community. And it could be used as, if we had it was a big enough of our field, it could still be a field or something else that would add to the recreational aspects of the area of the waterfront. And that's the thing. And I somehow, if we can mix the commercial and the recreational aspects of the waterfront, that would be a nice outcome. I think, let me just, this is crazy. I had to have eye surgery this summer, and I'll tell you, I think it's wrecked my life. I think that's it. Oh, the other thing, yeah, one other thing, this is important. Coming to that spring session is I realize what you guys are grappling with is the continued existence of the port. How is the port going to continue to exist, and in what form once the bridge is given up? Okay, this is the problem. What's going to happen? And so I'm almost wondering, maybe on a realistic assumption, or one of your, plan A, plan B, plan C, might be plan D, what I'm suggesting. But I'm thinking that maybe it'll be very small. Maybe it'll just have the airport and the marina, and maybe it'll have the waterfront, or maybe Parks and Rec will have that. Maybe it'll be divided differently. And so I think that's something that, with you're thinking, oh, we're going to have all this money. Well, a land lease on 1 acre property like Barman is going to look like peanuts, in 5 years, whatever agreement you make, most likely. And it just is, anyway, that's my view. And that's what we've seen with the rising prices. Christy, sorry. I'm sorry it went so
Okay.
long. I will stop.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that all of public comment? Did mention the written public comment. Then moving on to consent. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item K? Get a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair I passes. The vice chair I. Whatever I am. Okay, on to informational reports. Mr. Greenwood.
I have nothing to add aside from the fact that we're getting materials ready to send out to the evaluation committee. And so we've got training on Thursday for the RBMC RFP. So appreciate Commissioner Fox's assistance with that. I do plan on bringing that ARPA agreement for $5 million to the commission at the next meeting. So we did get that template, and so that's a good sign. So that's part of the 15 million. So we are currently under contract for the 5 million from Washington State. Will be for the 5 million from the Oregon ARPA. And we're still working on the build grant, but making progress.
Kevin, do we have anybody going to Thursday's President Biden's visit to Portland?
No, I don't believe so. At least not from.
Any of our delegations all going? And Wyden will be there, I realize that, but anybody local, Senator? It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's what he's here for.
I think we missed an opportunity there.
Huh. Maybe we should have staff maybe look into it in the next couple of days and see if we can find a contact or.
So when is it? Is it this Thursday?
Yes, this Thursday.
Yeah.
But it may be worthwhile to have somebody at the round table, because he's here for I-5, one of the major things.
Yeah, let me follow up and maybe see what if Dan Moore, so Biden's field rep.
That's Marquise.
Or Marquise field rep.
Well, I think we ought to push
Senator
out to the
Thompson?
bi-state group too and see if we can't get one of those to see if we can get them to attend as well. I just can't do it Thursday.
But I'd like to have an elected official myself, I mean, higher up to be there.
Like Senator Thompson, maybe.
Yeah, so it's a rare opportunity to have him in the area and to actually be here for that reason, for infrastructure. With a new, $1 trillion bill. Yeah, it's a missed opportunity. So I would like to have somebody higher up than bi-state personally to represent us and know the ins and outs and context. I mean, it could be somebody with the individual, but
Well, I'm thinking somebody like Jake Anderson, who's a county commissioner. plus a local
And
representative.
also too, there's opportunity to Thursday afternoon in Seattle too. Because he's gonna go to Seattle on Thursday afternoon. So Friday, I think he's gonna talk in Seattle. So maybe Senator King or something could be there, would be there, maybe. Follow up with that.
Yeah, that's great.
Because we got two opportunities. We got Oregon and Washington, Thursday, Friday.
Good point. The other thing that we're trying to do, we're trying to set up a meeting with Hal,
Mhm.
between Jake and myself and you to talk federal funding.
Yeah.
See if we can't crank that up a notch before.
Yeah, there will be, there hasn't been a notice of funding opportunity released quite yet, but there is IIJA bridge replacement program that has considerable funds that we would be eligible for.
Right.
So I've talked to WSP a little bit to see if they've, what their scope looks like, because we do have a little bit of budget for them to help us with a grant if the commission and the by-state working group choose to go that route.
It kind of depends on timing too, because I really like, this should be part of the responsibility of the RBMC. But if they're not there yet, absolutely, we don't want to lose the opportunity.
Yeah, it's such a fast turnaround. Sometimes these, the NOFO's out and you've got maybe a month to produce the application. But luckily, we've got a lot of good materials on file from past applications that we can tap into.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not against going after WSP to help us, but just depends. I'd rather not put a bunch more money with them when we have this other entity that we're standing up. But if we can't, we can't.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard from Hal and others that IIJ funds could be out like the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
So the RBMC wouldn't be up and running quite yet.
Yep.
And so that's why it's nice to have WSP in this kind of interim role until the RBMC is up and running. But absolutely, Hal, I've already mentioned to Hal that for our next bi-state working group, if he could just prepare a memo and even attend, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, and again, I'd really like to have that discussion with Hal this week, early next week. Well, next week's gonna get crazy for us, but, and I'm not talking half an hour.
Yeah, maybe Friday.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll follow up with you on that.
So to kind of continue with what you said, we expect bids in. Bid close of business on Friday. We'll get all the bids out to all of the evaluators, and there's 6 of us. And then we start reading through the bids, and by the end of next week, we've had a down select to 3. And then we've invited them to orals, which will be on the 9th and the 10th of
Correct.
May.
Yeah.
And then Friday, the 13th, we decide on our recommendation of who to proceed with. And then we take it to the bi-state and we take it to the port.
And I
Start
believe that's
negotiation.
May 17th meeting. That's the second meeting in May.
Well, I think we may want to call a separate one. It just depends on how quick we can get this in. It may go faster than what we thought.
Nice.
And if it does, I'd rather we try and get together for a half an hour, walk through it with the port, make the decision and keep going. So. Well,
Sounds good.
and I know the bi-state's ready to meet whenever we're ready. So,
Thursday, we can figure out the game plan for distributing the proposals.
right.
But other than that, that's all I have in my report.
Good work.
Thank you.
Lots of work. Okay, item 4, presentation and discussion, bridge weight limit analysis, next steps.
Well, commissioners, this is a discussion item with a presentation and a potential action. But this, of course, relates to the weight limit rating that was imposed and the need for a supplemental load rating analysis. We have Mark Libby from HDR Engineering. Mark is going to talk us through this a little bit. but I just want to emphasize, stated in the memo, the commission, whether it's this meeting or approximate meeting, will need to take some action. Some choices in a way, but fundamentally the commission has to take action because, as Mark will explain, that we're going to approach ramps. So you have the summary of the 3 potential options, and you have attachments to the memo that Mark will speak to, and you have a potential action recommendation. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you, and if you could just walk the commission through what you're seeing and what their options are for next steps.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Good evening. Good evening, commissioners. The exhibit that was attached was intended to kind of help narrow down the focus of what it is we're looking at versus what was the messier version in the earlier reports that showed all the deficiencies. So our primary focus, the number one thing is the Oregon approach ramps. We have to address that. I tried to clarify that by showing that the deficiency that came out of the load testing puts that at about I think it was, if you lost my exhibit, it's like 13.6 tons. So this table that we had in the report assumes that we address the Oregon approach bands. So Genevieve, I don't know if you could go to that exhibit. There you go. Thank you. So there's a rating factor of 0.34 for the 3S2 truck. So that needs to be addressed. That was our original intent, was trying to get that done as early as possible. That gets us back into the range of the 36-ton restoration without having to do anything else. But you wanted to have the acid plates included. And looking there in span 3, that first bottom chord point circled, that's the one that's currently limiting things to the 36 tons for those K3 trucks. So to get to the 40 tons, that would need to be strengthened. The other 2 in that span were higher. They are there's a 0.99 and a 0.95 factor. Those are for the SU7 truck, which is kind of akin. We had mentioned all along that we don't plan to repair for the EV3 truck, which is a very heavy, short axle span truck. The SU7 is also quite heavy, and that's a choice of, do we want to spend the money to raise it for that specific truck? So every truck configuration's a different effect and a different load capacity. So it kind of keep focus on what your users really are and what you need to prepare for. So the other things that we're doing is the span 19 truss was not instrumented out of efficiency from the load testing. ODOT did not have the improvements that were made from the 1996 widening plans that we found during the last phase of the project. Has some high strength tension rods added to the bottom chord. And then we also have the plan details for the tapered deck width on the truss. So that is to go back and have BDI take the span 4 truss model that they already have, modify that to include the tension rods and the effects on the deck, and then apply their live load testing to the deck. We think most of this will go away, but we had to anticipate that there might still need to be some strengthening. So we included those caveats in our scope and added some budget for those designs should they need to be done. It's just, we don't know yet. And that's why, originally we didn't have that in our task order. once they do the additional analysis, then we'll know what the extent of strengthening repairs are. These bottom core joints, I just note out, they're all very similar in the detail. They're a splice in the bottom cord. So the strengthening details and approach will all be very similar. And so we can start with joint 4 work while the other analysis is going on. And if other joints need to be strengthened, it will be a rather simple modifications and additional design to incorporate those. On the Washington approach spans, similarly, the span 26 was not instrumented or analyzed for efficiency, but since we're doing the supplementary load rating, we need to include that to verify that there's not any anomalies or issues. There's potential for a slight shear rating factor to be below 1. Can't really give it odds at this point. We just need to verify it. I think it's fairly low, but there is some potential. And then we're adding the 2-inch AC overlay, so we need to evaluate the effect of that. That could have, a few hundredths effect or so on the rating factor, and it depends. Also, in the span 22 analysis that we did have, there was one anomaly rating factor. And I'm going to ask BDI to revisit that again. We had discussed it last time around. They said it was just the way their numbers came out, but I want them to take another look at it. So the Oregon approach bands as well gets the 2-inch AC overlay. And so the intent is the sequencing of work is we can get in and get the details for the Oregon span lateral bracing and the joint 4 and span 3 gusset plate designs going. The rest of the work will have to wait until the additional analysis by BDI gets accomplished. And then if there's additional incorporation into plans, we can address that. There is potential, if Port wants to, that we could implement Oregon approach bans before the fall fruit harvest. If that's the desire. Otherwise, I think gusset plate work we would be targeting just after the fall haul season. So I think it's late October, early November to get that work done.
Mark, this is Michael. Could you clarify that? Are you saying that the lateral bracing on the Oregon approach ramps is fairly easy to prepare plans and specs, and that work could be done in a fairly short period of time? And would that timing be the next few months, say?
Yeah, basically what this is adding steel channel between the girders. So pretty much need a man lift, a mag drill, some bolting equipment. We drill holes through the webs of the girders, bolt in some angles on either side of the webs, bolt in a steel channel diaphragm. So it's basically, these spans have a concrete diaphragm at mid-span. They need an additional diaphragm at the quarter point of the span to brace the bottom flange.
Do we need to do that work in order to I'm going to call it redeck the approach on both sides?
You need that lateral bracing according to the analysis to pretty much keep your bridge open. As I was showing here, you would be limited. This is a different result than what ODOT came back with. ODOT had a different deficiency that BDI did not have, which was positive moment bending. This rating factor would limit to 13.6 tons. well below the 32 that it's currently posted at.
Okay, so it's your feeling that that lateral brace on the Oregon side, we've got to do immediately just to take the loads that the bridge is taking now. Is that correct?
It should be done as soon as we can. Now, I caution to don't get overly excited about it because, again, that's what the analysis shows. The bridge isn't necessarily reflecting that, or you would see conditions that are worse than they are. However, it's a simple thing, and the sooner the better. My initial thinking on that was it would allow you to at least get to 36 tons before the fall harvest. I'm not sure that we could do the gusset plate strengthening to get to 40 before the fall harvest, though.
Okay, so your recommendation is do that one piece no matter what, as quick as we can. Okay, now the rest of it, the question that I've got, you go through your analysis of this, and then you have to sell the analysis to ODOT, correct? They have to approve any report, any request that raises the weight limit back up on the bridge, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now, what's our confidence factor that once we do this analysis and assume the analysis, in your opinion, shows that yes, we can raise it back up with these modifications? What is your view, the likelihood of ODOT agreeing with our methodology and the results of the study?
I think very high. I would not expect them, for one, it would be quite difficult for them to really go through. I don't think they would do a detailed analysis. They're going to accept it as an engineer stamped load rating.
You know, I don't mean to be critical, but I'm trying to understand. I thought we had this discussion the last time when we did the load study on the bridge, and that we felt pretty confident that ODOT would accept our results of the study. And I think what came back is, no, we need additional data points or additional methodology. Is that what happened?
Not exactly. They don't have any issue really with the analysis. It's just that a load rating has to be, it's a stamped document that has to support the load posting. The issue was then going back, were they going to update the load rating, which they're the official owner of the current one, or do we take it over? And the conversation, the meeting we had with ODOT was they would accept a supplemental load rating addressing those items on the bridge and those trucks that we are targeting. So we don't have to redo the entire load rating. We do the ones that address the deficiencies that they've restricted your loads for, like the Oregon approach spans. All right, we had a difference outcome from them, and we would provide that justification and show that strengthening. The for the truss span, similar things. I mean, since we've done a live load test, they're not going to choose their analytical factors over that actual load test results. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So it sounds like what we're doing here is also transferring liability as it is with ODOT to make that decision to us and you. Based
Correct.
on your analysis, we raise the limit back up. Is that not true?
That's correct. So we would produce a supplemental load rating, just a stamped document for the elements and trucks. So we're not doing all 20 trucks. We're doing the legal trucks.
No, I get it. I understand.
Right.
So it's a subset
And so it's
more
just those
restricted.
limited ones that we are addressing, similar to in our report. We had those summaries of load rating factors and sort of like the green columns where we had done updates. That's what would be producing
Okay,
final fashion, and those would be the resulting factors. And so, like, for example, in the EV3 trucks, those might still have rating factors below 1. So that truck is still going to have some restriction. But the type 3 trucks be back to 40 tons once we do the gusset plates, for each of those trucks that it addresses. And we would make decisions after we did the rest of the analysis. Do you want to strengthen to make the SU7 truck rate or allow that to have a slight restriction? So that gets really into your customer base and, cost benefit of that additional repair for that truck.
My question to you, Michael, is that if we approve task 11, engineering and actually construction is approved and completed, and we raise it from 32 ton to 36 ton, how beneficial is that to the agriculture industry?
Well, I've reached out to a group of folks that have been keeping informed about this. And for some businesses, it's a pretty big impact.
That 4 ton though, would that be sufficient to?
I think Brad is still on the line. I don't want to speak for him, but there's a material difference in that 4 ton because you can have a full load.
Okay.
And that makes a big difference for some commodities.
How important is it to reach the 40 ton level?
That's what I was speaking to. That last 4 ton is important.
Big one.
That provides a full load. And that's what is really necessary for efficient transport and to lower costs, not only to customers, but to.
So the 36 is a Band-Aid somewhat.
Yeah, one comment that came back from High Cascade was, you can see it right there. It doesn't really help that much for them. It's 40 ton that's where they need to go.
the other issue I think we got to consider here is, as we gotta make this bridge last at least another 8 years. And I agree that we need to do some upgrades on the bridge. I'm not right there yet on going ahead and increasing the weight limit, because weight and speed tear the bridge up. And I am very concerned about bringing the weight back up and not being able to maintain this bridge for the next 8 years for a segment of the population.
Well, those two comments go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So if you raise the 40 to 40, we got to allocate funds to maintain it. It's a no brainer. So if you choose one of them, you got to choose both of them.
My concern is we're going under another ODOT inspection, right? In the next month or two.
At some point during the summer.
It'd be interesting to see what that shows. Have we further degraded the bridge? That's not even included in this analysis.
That's correct.
And that's what's got me concerned. What we don't know out there on the bridge. It's aging, it's getting old. We got to take care of it. We got to protect it for another 8 years. So I'm real concerned about loading the weight back up on it.
John, how detrimental is speed, the deterioration versus load?
I think speed is probably more
Is it?
detrimental to us than the actual. If the loads were going at 25 miles an hour across, I bet we would see far less damage to the bridge. The problem is, the trucks get
Enforcement.
loaded to 40, and then they go across the bridge at 40. And that's when we have a problem. So if we could, I personally feel like, well, one, the first repair, I believe we can do in-house. So that's really cost of steel and manpower, and I believe that's
That's
well
on the
within
Oregon
our
side.
wheelhouse.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
That's well within our wheelhouse, I believe, to fix that in-house. So I think we just make the decision on that one and fix it. That has to be fixed. Let's just get going. But as far as like looking at lowering, we have an obligation to take care of that bridge, but I believe we also have an obligation to our community here.
Sure.
and not damage businesses and set them back to a point where they might not make it to that 8-year period. I believe that somewhere in there,
There's a happy spot.
there's a happy spot. I believe I think it's a combination of get the speeds down and bring the weight limits back up.
Didn't we allocate funding for signage, for electronic signs?
That's what we did.
And they do work. When I see myself, I slow down. I go, I'm that guy going too fast, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you too. I rode with you before, yeah. But well, I'm thinking too, do we lower the speed even more to 5 miles an
Well,
hour?
that's fun.
And
I have-
lower,
I have talked about that.
And maybe
I would
seasonal.
love to do that for the simple reason that if you have a speed limit at 25, you can expect speeds of 30 to 35.
right, yeah.
If we were to lower it down to 15,
Mhm.
you're gonna get a lot of complaints, but let those all come from the trucking companies. Now, what do you want?
You want,
Do you want the full loads back, or do you want the speeds
You
down? I
bet.
think I think they have to be willing to meet us
And also,
in the
that'll-
middle on this.
that'll address Commissioner Fox's concern too, as far as long-term maintenance on it too.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so I think we should consider that.
I think if we can meet in the middle, that would, they have to drive slower over the bridge, but at least they get a drive over it.
So
Yeah.
our timeline for those electronic signs,
They will be in the budget. They're in this next coming budget, so I'll have that all worked out. We'll pull the trigger on
okay,
first day. of
and that'll be
budget.
installed in-house.
Yeah, we'll do it in-house, yeah.
Michael, am I able to make a comment?
It's up to the chair.
Sure, I don't see a problem.
So I think we've gone through this whole analysis and we're looking at an investment into the bridge of maybe $200,000 to get all of the fixes done and put back so we could possibly increase the load rating back to 40 tons. Regardless of that, why wouldn't we put that money into the bridge so it will last until we can get a replacement bridge built?
Brad, this is Commissioner Fox. That part I agree with totally. I'm not against spending $200,000 to.
As far as I'm concerned, we should do everything we can to keep the bridge. So we're not having this conversation 3 years from now and we're at
Absolutely.
the point that we can't even haul fruit across it.
Exactly. So I'm okay spending money to strengthen the bridge. I'm still not convinced about raising the limit all the way back up. I think it's a combination of speed and how careful we are in taking care of the bridge. And there's going to be other things that are going to pop out of these various audits that are going to come up. They come up every year. And that bridge is getting older. So I just need it to last 8 more years.
Brad, Commissioner Strike, what's your feeling on lowering the speed limit in your industry?
I think that's a fine idea.
Thank you.
I think that we could probably work with these industries that this gravely impacts, and I think that they'd be very willing to work with the commission,
I absolutely agree with that.
with the court. Okay,
If I could, I'd like to have a kind of an action to take a look at the contract with engineering, limits of liability. If we're taking over now the responsibility from ODOT, we're transferring responsibility. I'd just like to know, where is our engineering company in that realm?
If I may,
What is their limits of
I'd like
liability?
to hear Michael's input on that, as far as if there's a concern that we should be concerned with. Commissioner Fox is concerned about.
Well, I think I defer to legal counsel on that one. But my sense is that, ODOT's required to do the fracture critical inspections. They're required to do the sufficiency ratings. They're required to do the underwater inspections. And it used to be that the port would have to pay for those, but for the last maybe 15 years, the federal government's required those to happen. And ODOT does it for all the bridges in Oregon. When they do that, and Mark, you can correct me, but they're not assuming liability when they do the fracture critical inspection. They're providing a service.
Correct.
And to the extent there's any liability, I think it would probably accrue to the engineering firm that did the inspection. But I've been here for almost 8 fracture critical inspections, and they always reveal things, but they've never revealed something that's dramatically different. And the things that we have to do, the floor beams or whatever. So I think by doing a supplemental load rating analysis with HDR doing it, we are relying on their professional judgment, as would ODOT, stamped load rating report and accepted by ODOT. And that's to the extent there's a liability in that, it accrues to the engineer who prepared it. But Mark knows the bridge as well as anyone, and they have, good engineers, and we should rely on their professional judgment and be confident.
You concur with that?
The inspection reports are stamped by a professional engineer, and there's liability, professional liability that goes with that. Same with the load rating reports, stamped by a professional engineer. So whenever you hear about one of these, a bridge collapse, like the one not too long ago in Pennsylvania, first place they go are the inspection reports and the load rating analysis. And whoever signed those reports are the first ones getting scrutinized.
And then, Mark, so just on timeline, if we did say, let's go ye forth to get the safest and best use of the bridge, you're saying that you could maybe get the load up to 36 before harvest, but not necessarily if we decided to up it to 40 by this. I just want to give the industry people a realistic expectation of what this summer would look like.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And it's a matter of a little bit of working with Port. And John, I think you've got a project coming up. I think you're doing the overlay project still coming up here pretty soon, right?
That's
I
correct.
mean, there would be a possibility maybe as adding that to contractors work through a change order if that contractor was suitable to do this additional work, sole sourcing it, because it's just doing those lateral bracing on the organ approach bands. You're basically going to be working from a man lift on the trail under the bridge. The second span might be a little tougher reach, either a bigger articulated lift, or they might have to hang some scaffolding. It's just a matter of the reach. So, but it's pretty simple work. We keep the details very simple. And I think that could be done before quite easily. It's
How
just a
quick can you
matter of
get the-
fitting that work in with a contractor that you can, get into place easily.
How quick can you get the design out to us?
Within a month.
And when are you scheduled to go with your,
About a month. But again, he was speaking to the need for an articulated lift, and we have taken a look at this and right where we have to be. We believe we can get there with our lift right from the shore. So,
you're talking about the lateral brace. I
That's
think
correct.
he's talking about the second span.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah, that stuff that would have to be included in a contractor with either climbers or the ability to suspend themselves underneath the bridge for the work.
Mike,
Yeah,
that-
John, we've got to
that-
do it either side of the bent,
Right.
right?
Could we get a design schedule for all the deliverables? And the lateral looks like it'll meet your month requirement. But when would the rest of it come out so we can lay in a plan, you can lay in a plan for the rest of the year of how would we incorporate this into the bridge?
Why don't Mark and I get going on that right away?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to see a schedule of
Yeah.
both of them. And that would include a schedule that shows the Oregon approach and the Washington approach on the redeck. And the whole thing.
Yeah, the other aspects from our end, once we're approved to move forward, then I can coordinate with BDI on their schedule. And I know they're very busy this time of year as everybody that does inspection work and stuff on bridges. And so I've got to allow a little bit of leeway for their time frame on the analysis. And so I don't have that schedule wise. The lateral bracing, we can do that right away. We don't really need anything else to do that. We can dive right in.
Michael, one question on this. In the memo, it says the cost at or under 200,000, but the potential action would be a different amount. Why the diff?
Well, there's engineering costs,
Right.
which is inclusive of this, and the construction costs. Mark and I had a conversation, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but 200,000 is
Okay.
an upside limit to actually do the work. It could be a bit less than that, maybe quite a bit less. It's just hard to tell right now.
Okay,
So we're looking at 339, 340,
total.
maximum 340, engineering costs and construction costs 340.
Yeah, Mark, would you concur? 200 plus the engineering cost gives us an outside limit of 339,000.
So yeah, our amendment was for was the 139, right? Then on the construction side, again, it does depend on the outcome of span 19 and the Washington side, if there's additional work. Otherwise, it's pretty low. If we're only doing 2 joints on span 3, then that's going to be pretty low. I have to look at what we were estimating. I don't have that number at my fingertips per joint.
That's about right. That's what our estimate would be at this point.
So our capital expenditure is actually 330, 340,
Correct.
not 200.
And that would bring us potentially, if we decided to, back to 40.
That's right.
Okay.
So you have an opportunity to take action now if you'd like, or there's no action items, so you could consider it right now and decide what you want to do.
I
Well,
believe,
position
Michael,
ourselves-
we had
Position ourselves,
estimated,
we gotta do the 139. We don't have to do the 200 yet, although I would suggest that we give approval to do the lateral braces. And you guys do them, so as soon as he gets you a sketch or a drawing, you can order up the material.
You know, the timeline doesn't match up well though with the approach contractor doing this work too, because
Yeah.
he's gonna look at these plans will be ready for a month. And he's gonna be here in a month. He's gotta bid them, look at them, see if he got approved.
Yeah.
So that's not realistic.
Maybe just the perfect time for us to be working underneath there.
Yeah.
Because we won't have any effect above the deck, so
Yeah.
if we can look to try to schedule that work right at the same time.
And the members that you're looking at are these no long lead time stuff is available.
All acquirable right here locally.
I would say as soon as, in my opinion, we vote on it, but I would say as soon as he can get you a sketch, order the material, get it cut, get it fabricated, and ready to go. Once the design is totally done, go do it.
I agree.
And then we approve the 139 or 140 to get the design done for the whole option. And
But then
again,
will we have to come back to approve the 200 for the construction? And how would
yeah,
that-
because
That's
we don't even know if it's 200.
Okay.
You know, by the time the design is actually done, it's going to be something different.
Do we want to address the speed limit now and also authorize those signage to be done
Yes.
out of this budget
Yes.
and not wait? Because it
Yes.
sounds like
Just if
longer
that's
we-
consensus, just giving us direction is fine. We'll have to move money, find another
Yeah.
place for it, but that's not, it's a nominal cost. We can do it quickly.
is everybody fine with that?
I'm
Yeah.
very
Just
fine
get the
with
signs
that.
up as soon as possible, look at lowering the speed and prolong that line. Okay.
I think it's a win-win for the industry community, people and safety of the bridge.
So do you want me to make a motion or?
If you would like to make a
Okay.
motion, sure.
I move that we authorize 139,920 to,
Read that.
oh, thank you, yeah. We approve amendment number 4 to task order number 11 of master service agreement with HDR Engineering Inc. to prepare a supplemental load rating for the Hood River Bridge not to exceed 139,920 plus reasonable reimbursable expenses. On top of that, we approve for maintenance operations to procure lateral bracing material needed per the design that HDR will be providing within the next month, and to go ahead and get that work done as soon as possible on the Oregon approach.
Speed limit signs as well.
Speed limit, yeah.
It doesn't need to be a motion, it's consensus, I think.
Yeah.
That's a- you Want a motion on that?
Well, I think you're making a motion, but that may be a separate motion, but I think it's a good idea to have the speed limit in the form of a motion also.
Okay,
So I've made the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair, aye. Vice Chair.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion in regard to have the speed limit sign set up this year in this budget, find the funding somehow, and also to go ahead and address the lowering the speed limit by 5 miles. We want to address that or want
Right.
I'd like to
to?
see
What is it
15.
now? It's 25?
25 right now, and I would really like to see 15.
Is this something we want to have a specialist
No,
instruct us on it, or we just want to go ahead and do 10 miles?
20 miles an hour.
John wants 15. He's more of a,
I think if we say 15, they're gonna go 20.
5. And 30.
Well,
But
what
it's
is-
Could it
going
be
to help.
15 for
Bridge of the
trucks?
Gods
Yeah,
is
15 for
not
truck
much.
for everybody else.
well, is that gonna, John, in your professional opinion, is that gonna confuse it if we don't have one set speed?
To be
Is
one
that down the
set speed.
freeway?
Yeah, it would be one set speed right from the approaches all the way across.
Absolutely.
You know, I think I'd just soon go lower at 15. If we
Mhm.
have complaints and it's prolonged the life of our bridge, we can argue that complaint.
I'll go
I
with
agree
that.
with that.
That's a
Oh,
good
wait,
point.
is it?
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm fine with 15.
So that'd be my motion to lower the speed limit to 15.
So can I ask a question again, Ms. Chairperson?
Sure.
With Commissioner Fox's recommendation and the reduced speed limit, will that in effect change the load rating, or do we have to wait until the repairs are done?
No, we have to go through,
We have to wait, Brad.
yeah.
But it's just a preliminary thing to get people used to 15 miles an hour and also prolong the life of our bridge starting immediately.
Well, Brad, to be able to raise the load limit back up, we've got to get the analysis from engineering and their recommendation and approvals to raise the load rating back up.
And I think that,
Okay, thank you.
and I think if the speed limit's lower, it will help the engineering company support their load rating.
Is that true?
I would have to look to see whether we get any additional reduction. I believe they've already reduced the impact for low speed. I'll have to check whether or not there's any additional reduction available.
Thank you.
So the motion. Yeah.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair, aye. Okay, it's a start.
Good one. Very good one.
Let's try and get that load rating back up. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We look forward to more. Next is the executive director report.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you all.
Well, it's a lengthy report, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. First, in the first bullet, we have the minutes from spring planning. Those are really important, and we've received comments on those. There's a separate document attached to my report, which is some of the very specific takeaways. And just to be clear, that's in large part done when Fred returns, which should be tomorrow or Thursday. He's got to turn immediately to preparation of the budget. So we have to be as directive as possible, make his job easier. So that's the intent, to sum it up and be very, very clear to Fred when he returns. It's not perfect. So if you see something that is incorrect or should be added to that, please let me know. Second, the budget committee is May 3rd. This is another, not quite as long as spring planning, but a lengthy meeting. The intent would be to start at noon. It would be likely 3 hours. Could be shorter or longer. But also attached is just the very standard typical budget committee agenda. So you can get a feel for the meeting, but we will serve food and we will, remember, reconvene as a budget committee, which means that each commission member and each budget committee member have equal standing in terms of votes and such. And the intent is to approve the levy and to approve the budget with any changes that the budget committee identifies. And then finally, I just wanted to make a note, if you didn't see it in the paper, ex-Port Commissioner Will Mock passed away on March 15th. And this is something we've done for years. When we see a commissioner pass away like that, we typically will contribute to whatever charity's been identified. And Mr. Mock, I never met him, but he was an assistant to Senator Jacob Javits and to Senator Robert Kennedy. He was the director of the Rouse Company that did Columbia, Maryland, and a variety of other projects around the country. And then I thought this was important. Sensing the potential for mixed-use development on Hood River's extensive waterfront, Will was elected port commissioner, involved in numerous land development in the Hood River and Portland area. When Diamond Fruit closed its cannery, he championed the port's purchase and redevelopment of 800,000 square feet of buildings on 20 downtown blocks. So the commission acquired those, big part of downtown Portland at what's now the Sprint building, and was a big part in the redevelopment of that. So his tenure was from 1983 to 1987, single term. But I've seen his name here multiple times and documents have been signed, and I think it's important to honor and recognize the passing of someone like that contributed a lot. So we'll, as we typically do, we'll contribute a reasonable amount to the charity that was identified as the, well, not a charity, PS2 Center for Real Estate to nurture responsible development. That's my report.
Okay, one thing that I had, one question on that, or not really a question, but a comment is I saw in your report about signage on the waterfront property, getting more signage.
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, I know Visit Hood River is looking for ways to spend money. And so they could help us get some cohesive signage if we wanted to work with them.
This signage project is funded by.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that's it. Okay, any commissioner committee reports? No, okay, and there are no action items. Any commission call? Commissioner, have anything?
Madam Chair, yeah. You notice on our consent agenda, item J was the event permit for fee waiving request.
Uh-huh.
It's come to my attention that we haven't addressed that. We addressed that policy in 2015. Four of you have never actually had input on that policy. And I think it'd be probably beneficial to bring that policy back to us, and this, maybe you guys have your input. The fact that you're agreeing to something you actually didn't do and make its policy. And I was there.
Mhm.
But
Good idea.
I'm going to revisit it. I spoke with Daryl briefly about that. Do you want to speak at all about it?
Sure. The last version of the fee waiver policy is from 2015. And, it's on the, this is the fee on the permit on page 50. But I could bring it back to you at the next meeting, just give you guys some time to digest that. And if you want to just do a quick discussion on if you're comfortable with it, or if any of you would like any changes.
And this would be moving forward, not for this.
Not for this.
Okay,
This,
perfect.
we're good to go.
Okay.
hopefully.
You know, my-
But for the future.
Just for the future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just get the current commissions, because it was also drafted before my time.
Right. My concern too is Daryl's enforcing a policy that she had no input in.
Okay,
And it'd be helpful to have her input. Yeah, because it could be a controversial topic. I want to make sure we're consistent and we know why we do it.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thing that you brought up there, that maybe we ought to consider more strategically. Once every 5 years or once every 10 years, we have a rolling wave of these policies that we always bring back. So we don't sunset them, but we have a vehicle to automatically bring them back in for a review.
You know, I understand the concept. I'm not sure we can implement it. It might be a nightmare administratively. You know, it may be a situation where we hire a new employee like Daryl,
Mhm.
and she brings it to us and say, hey, I'm not familiar with this. I wasn't privy to this. Can we look at it? It may be easier that way than having staff go through all these policies every 5 years. Some policies that we never address. Just, I think from an administrative standpoint, would it be a nightmare for you guys, Mike? Would it be?
Maybe you take 2 or 3 years to do it. go through that process to establish a schedule, but
I definitely understand the concept, and I like the idea of addressing it and updating it and make it current to
yeah,
the person who's in charge of the department.
Even if there's just a schedule of a list of here's all of our policies, here's the date that they are implemented.
that would be a good start.
Maybe just look at it and go, just talk about them real quick or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that might be helpful is to tie it to the strategic, because that's when you set the
Oh,
priorities.
yeah.
Perfect.
And that's when you do your situation assessment. So we had, our last iteration was put together during COVID, so, it wasn't the greatest set of conditions to really drill down on all those policies and see if they still make sense in light of the demand. We've got much increased demand for events.
Mhm.
In broad strokes, the fees are waived for nonprofit groups and for youth. Those are the two focuses, and those are the two priorities that were set in that last time. But if you tie that, let's look at all the policies to the strategic business planning process, then that's every 4 or 5 years. And it's a good time to really look at all those things, because you're trying to adjust your policies to match your priorities.
Yeah, to his point, you need to look at it. It could be that you've got this big old hump every 5 years and you want to kind of spread that out.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's something to
We're
look at.
already doing that work every time we get.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? And then if we have confirmation of commission directives to staff.
Well, we had I didn't really understand what it was that Commissioner Fox, you asked Kevin to do with the directive for setting up a meeting with somebody.
Yeah, it was a
You guys
lobbyist,
understand what
federal
I'm talking
lobbyist.
about. I kind of missed exactly what that was, but I know there was a directive there. And so Kevin, what was it? for?
Yeah, that was
With Hal.
for us to talk to Hal Heemstra,
Right, so I have a meeting with Hal, but
and that's to basically identify upcoming grant opportunities at the federal level.
and then, otherwise, just what we spoke about. We're coming back to you at the next meeting, just to discuss the fee waiver policy, and I'll blaze through what I have. Maybe some other policies we can tie in just for you to look at that are old,
Okay.
that I work with, so I could do kind of a chunk at a time. And I think I really appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner Strike, and it's good to review it, because a lot of our stuff is old. I can't believe I've been here 4 years and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that's super old. It just goes fast.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
The only other follow-up that I saw was to try and coordinate with some of the electives and maybe elected officials and maybe county commissioners to get in that Oregon, Washington meeting
With the president.
with the
Biden.
president.
One follow-up from spring planning, I was wondering, if anybody had a chance to talk with your colleagues on city council or county commission about the river energy plan?
I was gonna do that for my commission.
Okay.
Yes. Is there anything else? So if not, so my commission call, and I guess I forgot to call myself as a commission call. I did have a chance to talk with Mayor McBride about the Energy Council, and I just kind of said, a lot of work was put into creating this program. Where do we see it now after it's been functioning for a couple of years? So the city has actually had great success with the Energy Council bringing things to them that they were unaware of. And so she said that the kind of the thing that they are happy with is that, the Energy Council will reach out to them and say, hey, we heard you're working on this, and there's this grant pool that you may not know about. And so they're bringing information to the city that they were previously unaware of. They haven't done it with the port, but we haven't really had anything for them to look into. She also said that because of the way that the administration is at this time, there's a lot of focus on energy. And so there's continually new buckets of money and grant programs that are being introduced, and the city can't keep up with all of them that are going on. And so she did say that for the city, they're finding a higher rate of return on what their investment is at this point, of what they've invested every year on just grant recipients. Now we are in a slightly different boat because we're we've been investing and we haven't been receiving. And so maybe as a commission, we would talk about continuing to participate, but at what level would we want? What do we feel comfortable with in our budget?
Do you know if the Energy Council also asked the city to double their,
They did.
okay. And they agreed to that?
I'm not sure if the council has met to agree on that yet. But I know that the ask was basically for everyone to double.
My opinion is that we haven't really gotten a rate of return off of our investment thus far. But I think it's worthy to support it. But I don't support doubling it.
Mhm.
I would say for where we are and where we're headed, I'd leave it the same at 10 grand. Because we've got to, even though it's a little money, you take a bunch of little money and it all of a sudden it becomes big money. And I think we've got to start getting ourselves really disciplined to that approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially since we're talking about, you know, an additional summer staff person and, you know,
Mhm.
trying to support our current team.
Now, if we can parlay that operation maybe out at the airport somehow, then maybe next year we look at raising it back up or raising it up. But I think we got to get in the habit of, okay, what's the rate of return? What have we got now?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Mike, do you have any input? It's kind of a gut feeling, so I'm kind of relying on you here a little too. You're at the helm here.
Seems like a reasonable approach. We've done taken a lot of initiatives on our own over the years to look for solar opportunities on our buildings. Look at,
Charging stations.
yeah, charging stations. We did an analysis that included the sewer plant years ago. So we've done a lot on our own. This is some of it prior to the Energy Council, but I mean, I want to respect what they do. It's important what they're focused on. It's just, it's difficult to see a tangible benefit to the Port of Hood Road. So part of this is we're part of the team, we're part of the community, we want to contribute, to assist, but at a certain point, which is what you're getting at, what's the marginal benefit? So that seems like a reasonable approach.
Yeah, I think 10 sends out a message that we're behind you, we support it, but we're just not sure the ROI is there for us. And you have our ear. We're not saying no, but maybe to double it is probably a little aggressive. That sound fair to everybody?
I think I can agree to that. That helps for budget. Okay, so that is all. Then I will recess the regular session. And thank you everyone for coming. And then I will call to order the executive session under ORS 192.6602E for real estate negotiations.